Okay, so joined today by Jay Smith of Unfair Sports. And Jay, we've got a major topic to talk about because one of the biggest storylines around college football for years now has been college football realignment. Whenever the news came down, Texas, Oklahoma set to move from the Big 12 to the SEC, that started it. The avalanche occurred after that. Then we see some movement out the Pac 12 to the Big 10. And many around the landscape are wondering where it ends because I think the one thing a lot of people agree on, there will be more moves. We're just wondering where they're going to be, what will happen. But news comes down today that the move for Texas and Oklahoma that so many people occurred would happen in 2024 now looks to happen in 2025. Nope, there's still time and opportunity to figure this out, but the contract negotiations are not going as planned right now. And per the contract, everything expires in 2025. So, Jay, before we get all into this, tell the people first off where they can find all of your great content, what it is you do. And then, yeah, man, talk to me about this because this is going to be a major storyline.
Ty, as usual, thanks for having me here on Around the Table. One of my favorite places to come chop it up with one of my favorite people, Jay Smith, Unfair Sports. You can find me on YouTube. That's where we're talking OU football, college football, and we're digging in a lot of Colorado football right now, too. I plan on adopting a Big Ten school and another SEC school by the start of next season. So we're going to have a holistic view of college football content. And so this topic itself is fascinating. And what's fascinating to me about this is that no matter what we say or do in regards to this conversation, the Big 12 is mad that OU and Texas are leaving and they want them gone. But no matter what offer OU and Texas provides to them, they immediately reject it. And it's very interesting because it seems like the Big 12 is saying, this is what I want. You give me what I want, and that's all that matters. And OU and Texas are like, well, no, we're kind of your cash cows. We're kind of the more important portion of your schedule. We're the premier teams. So no, we don't want to do that, but we'll negotiate if you're willing to. And it feels like in every capacity, the Big 12 is pushing back. And so with the news that came down today from Peter Thamel over at ESPN, I saw another article from CBS yesterday that OU and Texas gave an offer. The Big 12 rejected. And this is a very multi-pronged situation. You've got the Big 12 negotiating with Fox, with ESPNs for the media portions of it. And then you've got Oklahoma and Texas, mainly because with the Big 12. So it's like a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of hands are in the pot trying to figure out how to make this fair for everybody. We'll throw those in quotes specifically because it's just a lot of stuff going on with the media rights deals. The Big 12's new deal, if I'm correct, kicks in next season. And the SEC's deal kicks in 25, which is when Oklahoma and Texas were going to be there. And so the Big 12 is trying to find a way to get as much money as possible before they lose the people that usually brings in the most money. And I got to say, man, it's a little childish in my personal opinion. If you really want OU and Texas gone, just actually have a negotiation on the deal.
And this is the part that makes no sense to me. I think you hit the nail on the head. There seems to be two competing ideologies from the Big 12 right here. The first is that, okay, well, we're fine if you leave, but you have to pay us this massive buyout. But that seems to be competing with the other ideology they so clearly hold that they don't really want y'all to leave because of the revenue y'all provide or have provided for so long, being Oklahoma and Texas. We talked about this the other day, right? Whenever we were filming for a separate thing, we talked about in the future what the SEC will look like. And I referenced an article from 2021 where they evaluated the top 25 most valuable programs in college football. And Jay, you'll remember this. Whenever Texas and OU go to the SEC, 12 of the top 25 most valuable brands in college football are going to be located in one conference. So you can bet your bottom dollar that the Big 12 is cognizant of the cash cows, the golden goose, if you will, that they already have sitting in their backyard. That's why this is so perplexing to me, because one day it seems like the Big 12 is holding on as closely as they can to y'all. And then the other day it's seeming like they are begging y'all to just pay the buyout. like they're waiving the buyout, that's all they're concerned about. Now, I think the one thing everybody can agree, even if you're someone who's firmly in the camp of the Big 12 doesn't want us to leave, or if you're someone who's firmly in the camp of the Big 12 wants us gone, they want money.
Yes.
And what's so wild to me is that they seem to be floating both ideologies, which at some point does make sense. You want to give them options, but it's how much they're almost pushing both of those options. It's like, what do you really want out of us? Now, one thing you talked about is the competing media rights deals, right? You've got the Big 12s in 2024, you've got the SECs in 2025, but coming very soon is college football playoff expansion. And when you look on Twitter, there's a lot of people that are like, man, we want to get this move for college football playoff expansion. Now, Jay, I'm going to float this out there and I want to hear what you say to it. I don't think that's a very big deal, because if the college football playoff expands, Oklahoma and Texas can still get in out of the Big 12, right? Like that. I don't think that vastly diminishes their chances at a college football playoff berth. Now, I know one of the big reasons so many people were excited for the Oklahoma and SEC move was, hey, with the college football playoff expanding, there's going to be a lot of SEC teams in there. Oklahoma and Texas can make their way in. But I don't think that the 12-team playoffs is as big of a deal right now as it currently sits, because Texas and Oklahoma, they can make their path to the playoffs out the Big 12. What do you think about that? Or is there something you think I'm missing in that whole conversation?
No, you're spot on, because I mean the big thing is with that expansion, their goal is the top 6 ranked conference champions go, and then you've got of course the 6 at larges for the most part. And so because of that, yeah, OU and Texas have a great path to be able to be in there if both teams can continue to win continuously or consecutively, like they're supposed to, like in years past. They both can go. And as long as you've got no more than 1 or maybe 2 losses, you're probably going to end up making the playoffs based upon just how we've seen it in years past with the rankings at the end of the season with the top 12 or top 15. This is that I don't think this has any bearings or anything to do with really what's going on with the movement from OU Texas or whatnot, and with the new playoff setup, because like you said, they're going to be able to get in as long as they win. The Big 12 is not going to get blocked out of playoff conversation, even when OU and Texas leaves. And so I'm excited about the new playoff piece, because we're going to get more fun games and more action-packed games. Like this past year was the first time, I think, in I wouldn't say full era of the playoff, but I'll say for the most part that we had the first day had really good games. Like this is the first time we've had the first day, both games were really, really good. But then we led to a really bad championship game, which is par for the course. If you really think about it, in the 3 games that we've had in the college football playoffs over the years that it's in its inception, is we've always had 2 good games and 1 really, really, really bad one. And it's usually the first day. One of those games in the first day is awful. And then the championship game is usually way more competitive and more fun. This year, we didn't get that part. This year, we didn't get the trifecta, which I was hoping for. I was hoping we would have got 3 games, all good. Like, yeah, this is fine. We didn't get that. But with the 12 gamers, we're going to have that similar to, and I equated this to the NCAA tournament. Majority of people watched the March Madness NCAA tournament, and the best part about most people watching it is majority of people do not watch a single college basketball game up until that games happen. They just watch the games on the day because it's exciting. You got a bunch of Cinderella stories, random schools beating big schools. It's all kinds of craziness that's happening for like the first weekend. It's just a smorgasbord of excitement. But then the cream rises to the crop like it always does, and your 1s and 2s are back in the Final Four every year. We've only had like 5 schools outside of the top 4 to actually make it into the Final Four in March Madness. And so similarly to the college football playoff is all these first weekend games probably going to be pretty good. They're going to be fun. But then when those top 4 teams show up, yeah, the cream's going to rise and it's going to be blowout. So it's more so to give us an entertaining product up until the championship game, because we're probably not going to get it with this 4-team setup anymore. This past year's 2 games, I don't think that we'll see that again. I think that was an anomaly over the years, in which so far has shown us that I don't think like next year's we're probably going to see a blowout and a good game, and then a potentially good championship game this year. So
yeah. And you know how I feel about the expansion of the playoffs. Do I think it'll be fun? Sure. Do I think it's necessary? No, because I think a lot of people try and point to, oh, well, there'll be more parity. Well, there was supposed to be more parity when we went from the BCS to the college football playoff, and we're seeing a few teams run college football still, right? Like year in, year out, there's a few teams that are just owning the sport. And whether they win it or not isn't the point. It's that it goes through them.
Yes.
Right? Like how often did this go through Alabama? And now the previous few years, how often has it gone through Georgia? Right? So there's a theme beginning to emerge. Will the 12 team help it? Possibly. I'm under the mindset that like we can get to the 12 team, everybody will be excited, and then Georgia's going to pull off their belt and just start whipping through everybody until we get to the final game and we look up and we're like, oh, it's the same 4 or 5 teams that's always in this situation. That's how I think it'll go. Now, the one thing that the playoff expansion did do, Jay, that I love, right? Because you know me, I like the 4 team, right? Mm-hmm. But the one thing they did do that I am over the moon about that I think is inarguably a great idea. I think we can have a discussion about playoff expansion, but one thing I do not believe there's a discussion for is the home playoff games.
Oh my gosh.
That is a phenomenal idea.
I love it.
Yes.
I love it. That is the best thing. Those environments in college football.
That's no argument. That right there makes me almost come around to the 12-team playoff idea, but I just can't do it. But that one part of it, I am like, yo, this is a complete slam dunk. You outdid yourself for this one.
Sign me up.
Great.
Now, the only problem here, and I'm going to be honest, there's only one problem that I've felt about the home games.
Okay.
Is that there's a reason why college football stops in November, and all of the bowl games are played in the South. There's a reason. And this goes back to the old NFL piece. Like, people like to say, oh, this is football weather, blah, blah, blah. No, it's not. Playing in snow is not football weather. It's not. It never has been. It never will be. It's not. Because at the NFL level, they stop. The playoffs start in January. I mean, it's cold. It's miserable. It's not fun. College football, that's the reason why the University of Minnesota has a open stadium and the Minnesota Vikings have a dome, because the University of Minnesota stops playing at the end of November at home. And at that point, you're still in fall, technically. You don't hit winter until December 20th. When you hit winter, you start hitting those frigid, cold temperatures of negatives all the time. And so that's not something you want to play football in. I'm sorry, it's not. I mean, you ask any football player, they'll tell you, no, it's not that fun. Fall weather is great because it's cool and you're hot and sweaty and steamy, but playing in negative temperature, they're all sitting there. Every single player is doing this the whole time, struggling. So that's the only thing that I don't like about the home games, because if you start having games up in Michigan at the Big House, up in Columbus, if somehow University of Minnesota makes it into a playoff because they've had a good year, those super North games are going to be just dreadful. University of Washington, because, you know, the Pacific Northwest loves to snow.
Oh, God.
But it's still going to be fun having those games in the South, going to Tuscaloosa, going to Norman, possibly going down to Austin for a playoff game. Can you imagine a playoff home game between, like, Alabama and, let's say, USC goes down there? Oh my God, that would be so much
Rose
fun.
Bowl.
Or Alabama goes,
right? Like,
in Tuscaloosa. Yes. Just that would be so much fun and totally worth it. So yeah, I am in that same boat. That was the thing that excited me the most, was the idea of the first rounds being played on home stadiums. Hopefully they do it at the beginning of December. That way it's not as brutal when you travel, like to the north, because you're going to have some games in Michigan. You're going to have one in Ohio State if they're not in the top 4. Because if I'm correct, it's the first 2 rounds that would be at the home field, right?
I actually thought it was just the first round would be home field.
Okay.
And then after that, it went.
And then the 4 will play. Okay.
I could be wrong on that, but
I have to look that up.
That was my interpretation of it. But regardless, I think that's a overwhelmingly positive thing. I grant you that it can get cold. It can get real cold, but I do think that's a positive. Now, before we get out of here, I do want to get your thoughts as an Oklahoma fan, right? you hear you're not making the move until 2025, or at least as it currently sits.
Mm-hmm.
How does that make you feel as an Oklahoma fan? Were you wanting to head out in 2024? Are you fine with staying? Talk to me about that.
So on social media, one of the big trending topics right now around this is that you and Texas are scared, which I think is cute to say the least or whatnot, and it's not. It's not the case for me. I actually don't mind us staying one more year and dominate and reviving ourselves into a dominant force in the Big 12 and getting our bearings back to where it was, since we've had a coaching change. Texas is still trying to figure things out with Sarkisian and decide how they want to do things, and so for me, it'd have been nice to go to the SEC and just start to warm up there. But I don't mind us staying in the Big 12. It's not that big of a deal. It doesn't matter which conference we're going to play in. What matters is your coaching and your ability to get your players up and be able to perform. Going to the SEC, we're not going to play Alabama and Georgia every week. They're literally the only two scary schools in the SEC right now. LSU is always this. They've been a roller coaster since the early 2000s. And remember, before that, they really weren't that good. The Les Miles era of recruiting everybody in state changed the game for them. Alabama has been the consistent one, so they're, of course, the one you fear. And Kirby Smart walked in and took what Mark Richt was doing and took it to the next level. He got him over the hump. And so that's going to continue. Tennessee is kind of moving up. We don't know yet. We talked about this in another stream about my concerns about that contract that he just recently got, but I digress on that. I just saw that Alabama gave the basketball coach a contract extension too, because they were ranked number 2 in the country this year. That concerns me as well. So it's not just my team, or it's the coaches getting that. But going down that list of teams, I've seen Ole Miss lose, Mississippi State lose to teams. I've seen Florida get thrashed. I've seen, I've seen all these schools not win games that you thought that they were going to win. Hell, Oklahoma beat Florida in a bowl game 2 years ago. So.
Granted, they didn't have two of the biggest mismatches in all of college football.
Fair point on
defense, that. So
right. So it was like it helps, and that was supposed to balance it out. But
yeah, that was what was going to make it such a fun game. And my contention here isn't that OU wins with Kyle Pitts and Tony on the field. It's just that was what's supposed to make that game so much fun.
Agreed.
Those two.
Exactly. Agreed. And so for me, it's more of the OU and Texas will be fine going over there. They've played against those schools before. Everybody else in the conference, the one thing they have to do is level up, in which they're doing with their recruiting classes now. Texas at number 3, Oklahoma at number 4 on the 24/7 composite for their recruiting classes. They're getting their classes up to be able to compete with those tops. Now, they may not have 8 million 5-stars like Alabama's starting to do again, since Nick Saban actually had time to recruit like he wanted to. We're not getting that level of talent yet, but if you can develop them, half of your 5-stars go pro. The question is the ones that you got are the ones that are pro level, or if you're going to take those 4-stars that are going to actually go pro instead and build them into, something that is competitive. So I'm not mad about it. I don't think that it's a big a deal as people are making it that OU is going to have to stay in the Big 12, even though I'm not very happy with the Big 12 not wanting to negotiate. We'll just see what it looks like when the college football playoff starts up and see how much fun it's going to be.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun when they move. It will be an adjusting period, right? Because it's one thing to go from the style of the Big 12, but then if you have ever talked to these players that have played in like Big 12 and then talk to them about SEC, they'll tell you like, oh, it's, that's not like they're super scary, but it's different. It is very different, like the style. I'll never forget there was a player who said, in the Big 12, everybody's fast. Everybody's is good at their offense. He's like, in the SEC, they're fast, they're good, and they're strong.
Yes,
they're big.
All three.
And he's like, that's the difference. He's like, the speed in the Big 12 is there. The coaching, it's there. But the SEC, they're just big. They're just big dudes. But we also saw, in fairness to the Big 12, right? And I always bring this up whenever I'm talking to people, because for the people saying, oh, OU and Texas are going to come in and instantly hit the ground running, I always say, oh, there'll be an adjustment. There will. But flip side of that to the SEC is we've already seen there was an adjustment to whenever they had new styles come in. So there's going to be an adjustment for everybody. That's part right there is what we know. And the one thing is this allows more time for Oklahoma and Texas to recruit like they're in the SEC.
Exactly.
Because that's what you've got to do to win. That's the one thing we've seen. We can say whatever, but the SEC builds teams to win, like in just the way they recruit. Texas and Oklahoma have adopted that mindset. You look at the class Brent Venables just assembled. I know that it's, every time I say it, Oklahoma fans jump on me about Sark because they're like, Texas has always recruited well. You're right. They have always recruited well. Sark recruits different.
Yes.
Sark recruits in a manner that you look top to bottom and you're like, we can build off this. This is something we can do. Like Brent Venables. Lincoln Riley, Oklahoma, y'all recruited well under Lincoln Riley.
Flash, lots of flash. We got a lot of flash, and that was what Texas did too in years past.
Differently.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
He recruits top, like you said, top to bottom. What you need to be competitive. Yeah, people got to remember Venables was at Clemson that beat Alabama twice in national championships. He understands what you have to do to compete with the big guy and be able to get players that are be able to compete at that level. He knows what's needed. And they did a lot of their first starts of that with honestly 3 and lower 4 stars. They developed a lot of players too. They got them big and strong out there in South Carolina, out there at Clemson, and made it. They built them up. And then he recognized that, okay, that's not a sustainable formula. But the good thing is now that we have the winning behind it, we're going to get the bigger players that are already bigger, and we're going to grow them too while developing behind them. And so that's going to be key. And I think that's where, like, we've talked about the transfer portal on a few occasions of what that's going to look like long term, because in some cases, I totally get why some schools will go mainly transfer portal and very low on high school recruits, because you're getting guys that have already been in a workout program at the collegiate level. They're supposed to be a little bit more prepared. But sometimes some high schoolers are just freaks of nature. Like, I'm terrified of what David Hicks is going to do in college. I've watched him enough to know, I really wish Oklahoma would have won him, because he is going to be absurdly good. And you made the right point, too, is the SEC made their adjustments when they brought in new schools.
Came in.
Yeah, when Missouri and Texas A&M came in, people got to remember, Missouri won the SEC, their division, like 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
They were like up there 2 of 3.
Yep.
Yeah. So right. And they were able to compete. The problem is that Missouri's never been a school that invested enough into their football program to be able to go that deep. And it showed, because eventually they started to level out. Texas A&M was the same thing. The one thing you got to have 2 things. I'm sorry, I'm gonna switch this up. You got 3 things you have to have in order to be dominant in the SEC. And this is something that Georgia and Alabama both have. A quarterback that can throw it, an offensive line to protect them, and a defensive line to get theirs.
True.
You got those 3 in place, especially in today's football, you're going to win. And the question is can yours get their quarterback before theirs get yours? You've got to put those 3 together, man. It's critical.
It's necessary. And this allows Oklahoma more time to continue into their own conference, get things figured out. Specifically, I say Oklahoma here and not Texas, because Sark is entering year 3 with the Longhorns. Brent is entering year 2, not only with Oklahoma, but as a head coach, period. How many years experience does Sark have as a head coach? And he's in year 3 with Texas. So, you know what I mean? He's seen a lot. Brent is in year 2. I think staying in the Big 12 another year, I know some Oklahoma fans are disappointed. I think there are some positives here. Brent gets to stay without another massive change of scenery instantly. I think that can be positive for a young coach who's already proven his upside is unreal. But give him something consistent. Let him have a little bit of consistency before there is a massive change again, and I think it can yield great results for Oklahoma. Now, Texas, this is just a big year for them, period. This year.
There's no excuse this season. There's no excuse.
Big year.
Except for, I mean, I understand that the running back room it's going to be a big change, because you're losing like Heisman caliber running back. Totally get that. There's no excuse though. Texas, you produce these all the time. Like, you have a conveyor belt of them. Just go go grab another one and throw them in your system and let them go. There's another one in Texas. Yeah. Do what you do. Do what you do best. But no, you're right. Texas is this is their biggest year. I think that they have more to prove this year than Oklahoma.
I think so.
Personally.
I think Oklahoma, pride-wise, probably has more to prove. But in terms of long-term, this is a really big year for Sark.
Yep. Because this is the year where you have noticed you've got 3 classes technically underneath your belt. One piecemeal, because when you get the job, is you've always got a piecemeal class that you got to help still keep together from the last coach that got fired. Your first full class and then your second full class. So you've got 3 classes, 2.5 classes that are really hardcore yours. That's enough. That's when you're supposed to show true results. And if there's a regression, there's a problem. Same thing with Venables. Venables had the piecemeal class with Riley leaving. He took it in December and he had to save it. He had this class that just came through. And then he's got the class in 24 he's working on. So honestly, going into 24 season, that's the make or break year. That's it. And like you, I'm the give them 3 years. The make or break year is the year where it's like, all right, man, we're gonna put you on the hot seat. And then after that, if you don't continue, do your thing, then you got to be gone. So I am all over 3 years.
Yeah, if you don't show me something positive in year 3, like something that I can argue, that I can go to a table with all of my friends and be like, but we didn't get rid of him because of this. I get what y'all are saying, but there's this. If you don't give me an argument, I'm sorry. After year 3, if you don't give me an argument, it's probably running. Now there are factors, there are circumstances, right? Like Arizona State's going to be an interesting one to watch, coming off of the circumstances they're watching. Like, is 3 years for Kenny Dillingham, is that a fair time period coming off of what they're coming off of? I don't know yet. That's an interesting conversation. But what I do know is that Texas wasn't coming off of an investigation. Right? They weren't coming off of total chaos.
They didn't lose scholarships.
I grant you that. I grant you chaos, but they've now had someone for 3 years right that ship. For Oklahoma, the reason why I do say, Jay, Oklahoma, maybe pride this year the pride might be bigger for them than Texas. It's because Oklahoma is used to winning the Big 12. Like, how many years did y'all do that in a row? How many years in a row did you have 9 wins at least, and now you just had 6 and 7? The pride is a little bit different there, right? Like, and OU wants to get back to that. But I completely agree. Oklahoma, Texas, not looking like the move's going to happen until 2025. And I don't know that it's inherently a bad thing. I think it might be a good thing for both institutions. But before we get out of here, Jay, I want to give you your time to say your final piece and let the people know where they can find all your great content.
Yeah, so to wrap it up, man, it's unfortunate for some people, but at the same time, I think it's going to be a good thing for Oklahoma to stick around the Big 12, go through, grow, hopefully dominate it this year, win the Big 12 championship, and then maybe win it again next year and just leave with 2 trophies and say, well, I mean, that's kind of how it is. So you can find me at Unfair Sports. Like Ty, I drop constant college football content, really focus on OU football, drop a lot of Colorado football as I'm growing, and just college football in general. So as usual, Ty, thanks, man. We've got to do this more often. I'm gonna start making time in my schedule for you. We're going to make this happen more often.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I'd love nothing more. Guys, I don't believe a live stream will come down today at 5:30. I'll let y'all know on the community tab if it does. But right now, probably looking like that will be pushed into the weekend. But once again, I'll let you know for sure. Until then, more content coming your way, including a video talking about an Oklahoma wide receiver who could have a big year next year, something y'all don't want to miss. So, till then, we'll see y'all next time. That's it.
Peace.
See ya.